Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Aaron Trotman, the founder of 0% alcohol alternative wine brand Non, joins the program today and shares a window to his philosophy and experience in business. While globetrotting through Europe and Asia with his partner, they noticed that the option to exercise temperance with degustation meals was lacking, sparking the idea for Non to create a bottled drink that mirrors the quality and flavours found in prestigious kitchens without the booze. I had the pleasure of enjoying a tasting at NONHQ in Melbourne Southeast. It's a little bit out of town, but I highly recommend you check it out because the experience surprised me and I was appropriately skeptical, but Aaron, Nick and the team take the product seriously and Non tasted great. I hope you enjoy the episode today. Hello and welcome to the show, Aaron.
Hi mate, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. It's rare someone asks me how I am at the very beginning. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's hospitality, isn't it?
Thank you. Well, it's very kind of you to ask, so thank you very much. Aaron, as you know, the first question that I like to ask on the program is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. I'd love to know what you've brought to the program today.
We'll go with the exceptional route, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And I think it would be a big inspiration of Non. And that was from Orlando Marzo, who at the time was at Lume in South Melbourne, and his non-alcoholic pairings. And not only did he explain them beautifully, they were beautifully made. The food there, when Sean Quaid was there at the time as well, was just truly exceptional. I had that degustation twice, the exact same meal, because I enjoyed it so much and I've never done that before.
What was it that made it exceptional?
It was just the technical skill was brilliant. You know, it was just so refined that it was mind blowing. You know, that was just when I was like, oh, this is on another level compared to, you know, I've been to Foodamon and Attica and all those places that are on the list of everyone. And yeah, that for me was just something where I got excited again. I was like, okay, I'm having an experience here. And it feels new.
Sometimes and when we have those sorts of experiences, it's incredibly hard to articulate because it's on such a deep level that it really resonates. Is there anything in that technical expertise that you can pinpoint that really rung through for you?
Great question. And the answer is no. And the reason why the answer is no is because, and I often say this to customers that we're speaking to, is that people remember the experience more than they remember exactly what they had. And this was, 4 or 5 years ago, but I remember how I felt. And that's what I say when I'm saying, look, with non-alc, make people feel special, make them feel like they're thought of. They're not an afterthought. And they'll remember that experience way longer than they'll experience exactly why the fried chicken was delicious or whatever it is in your restaurant.
Interesting to hear that come out now, and I'm looking forward to opening that up a little bit more in the interview today. The second question I often ask is why you do what you do. And this is to get us into thinking in a lateral sort of space, thinking about what really drives you, what really inspires you, that sits underneath those things. In some interviews, I'll probe a little bit more to pull that out. But I'm interested to know what really sits behind the things that you do. We might have even started to see a little bit in your answer there, but
I think my vision and mission has somewhat changed a little bit, and it's probably recently. And that's because the categories changed and the landscape's changed. So when I first started it, it was basically a bit of an accident, a bit of a fluke in starting this alt wine category altogether. And that was because I wanted to do a CPG product. And I think like a lot of Melbourne guys, they wanted to have a cafe or a bar or something, right? Everyone's kind of done that thing. For me, I'd had my background in CPG with cosmetics, and I struggled with the notion that you can service a certain amount of customers with limitation to the area that the 4 walls. So Non existed where it was like basically like it was a dish out of a kitchen, which we're sitting near now, that is in liquid form. and I can ship it all around the world. And I wasn't bound or restricted by anything. So that's where it originally started. Now where it's probably changed is I think that non has a responsibility to drinkers. So I had this conversation with a chef in Malaysia last week actually, and drinking as a phrase basically is associated with alcohol, and alcohol owns it. Alcohol owns being drunk. They don't own drinking. And people would just go, oh, I'm going out for drinks, and that's alcoholic. But that doesn't mean that you're just drinking something. Like the word has all these connotations behind it. So in saying that, I feel like non has a responsibility with all this noise, a lot of brands coming into the category at the moment, some with some questionable quality and integrity, and also the vessel that they come in, that we need to premiumize non-alc and stick to our guns on it. And that is coming to the table with you with a full-size bottle, not a can. Can put you in a soda occasion. It doesn't put you in a sophisticated adult occasion. And if one person out of, let's say, 4 on the table and 3 are drinking wine, they get a nice, beautiful bottle, a nice, beautiful label. And then the non-alc drinker doesn't, you get a can. I have a problem with that. And basically, that's my new mission, is to make people feel good with our product. And for me, it's about height. So it's height and value and prestige and feeling luxurious in that dining moment.
You said it's about height?
Height being the size of the bottle. So if there's perceived value in your packaging, right? Of course there is. So if you have let's say shampoo, or if it's tall and skinny, the perceived value of that, it could have the same volume in a short, fat one, but the tall and skinny, you pick it up first because it's value and it feels luxurious in height. So I believe as well that that's the same for glassware as well. Like a stemmed wine glass feels way more luxurious than a stemless wine glass as well.
That's interesting. And I guarantee there'll be marketing managers listening who are going, oh yeah, that's true, or that's not true. So I'm interested to know if you've got some research that backs that maybe you can't share that necessarily, but have you got some evidence that supports that, or it's a bit of a hunch?
For me, it's a feeling. It's also seeing Instagram stories of our product shared. And, is it bias? Is it personal opinion? Maybe, probably, I don't know. But for me personally, look, I know with like toothpaste, for example, that the height is important. So there is some consumer research behind it that I know. Do I know the actual study? No.
But something between, obviously there's, it's not category specific. So it may very well be the case in alcohol as well, non-alc.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to something that you said there before, just to open that up a little bit more around what it is that's driving you, because I think something underpins that. I'm going to probe a little bit more on why you wanted to create a CPG product outside of the 4 walls, as you said there. What is it that sits behind that made you want to do something that extends beyond the physical space?
It was probably easier for me because I at least had some experience in it. I think it's that. And also I think that I don't like having limitations or bounds, and the idea of being able to make something and share it globally helps me and drives me.
Yeah. What is it about it being global that is exciting?
I think it's a measure of success if you can export. Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing for me. I think it's like if a band goes and cracks the US, right? You've made it, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a CPG yardstick to be saying we export as well.
Of course.
So I totally understand where you're coming from there.
And it's important for the government as well. It's important for taxes. It's important for job creation. It's important for a lot of things, There is people here, of course, and you can have a sizable business here, but it's nothing compared to a lot of the other countries around the world.
Certainly for a lot of CPG, consumer packaged goods, for those who don't know what CPG is, for a lot of CPG businesses or FMCG businesses, going to the US is the goal. And I know that you're already international as you stand. And when we caught up a few months back and had a chat, you were already exporting on premise to some of these venues. Are you in retail outlets internationally as well, or just on prem?
Both, yeah.
Do you want to talk us through, because a lot of listeners won't know, the sorts of venues, globally renowned venues that you're in currently?
Yeah, so when COVID hit, we had a Japanese importer hit us up, and I was like, yeah, sure, you're crazy, but yeah, I'll sell you some stuff. And it sold out before I got there. And then Singapore happened as well. And then we had interest basically globally for it. Restaurants are still in a bit of a tough spot at the moment, but it hasn't stopped us getting world's 50 best accounts and Michelin star accounts. And that's across California, New York, Singapore, Japan, Australia. We don't have Michelin stars, but we have the hat and the Good Food Guide, obviously. And Michelin has only just gone into Malaysia. So we've got, I think there's 2 Michelin stars and I got them last week sort of thing. So that's the kind of account level that we are going after when we launch a market, because that is your shop window, sans shop window, right? Having a physical site, being on menu in those sorts of places. In terms of off-premise, it's really important that we get that right from launch as well. So that is independent, trend-leading type accounts as well. It's a little bit different in the US for us because the way Australians view grocery can be somewhat diminishing to your brand. There's a fair bit of tall poppy syndrome that can occur with that. So we've been really careful about the placement and groceries role with our business here in Australia. But the US is totally different where, if you want to hit the ground running, you want an Era 1 listing, which completely changes the game. Also just the sheer amount that some of those chains have of stores and volume that they sell and the way that people shop there. For example, Target in the US is premium.
Completely different. Like it flips a lot of people's perception of what we have in Australia on its head, right?
Totally.
And we do have a lot of listeners in America. About 1/5 of the listeners to the program are based in America. So some listeners will be there thinking, oh yeah, okay, I know what that's like. But understanding that in Australia where we are, it's very different.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing that as well, some insights on what retail looks like internationally. So thanks for sharing that, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I'm going to take a step back and because we've gotten a little technical or started to encroach on some of those parts of your work that are a little more granular. Let's step back and look at it a bit more laterally. Tell me what it is that you actually do day to day.
So I'm the founder and CEO and GM and essentially a firefighter in the business, putting out fires every day in a startup. I lead our leadership team and I also go to markets and I do sell-ins and I do staff trainings and I'll do field days with the reps on the ground. I lead the creative direction of the business. I say yes and no to finance. I assist and coach the leadership team as much as I can with my limited experience of actually leading a team.
So many hats. You've got like every hat on, right?
Yeah. And I'm a dad of a 2-year-old with a wife at home as well. And there's not many spare hours in the day.
It sounds like you're an incredibly busy guy.
Yes.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly running startups, will resonate with that. And anyone who's an entrepreneur who's gone past that stage as well, that'll certainly resonate. You mentioned that exporting is a bit of a goal for you in your business, and you are exporting now. What's down the line? What's something that you're aiming towards? What does success really look like for Non?
We are aiming on going deep on what we would call platinum market, that being Australia, US and the UK, Japan and Korea as well. We currently have a competitive advantage in Japan and Korea because of we basically don't really use any preservatives in the drink whatsoever. And most non-alcoholic drinks have potassium sorbate in them. So we can export into those markets, which are notoriously very strict on what they let in and out in terms of food products. Non-technically is a food product because no alcohol is created whatsoever during the process. So that's how it's treated. The facility here is signed off as a HACCP food grade facility.
Which is good in itself. I mean, to achieve that is also difficult too. So
extremely difficult.
Yeah. And so for listeners who don't know, that's actually quite hard to get.
Yeah.
So it's a comment that you make in sort of passing, but it is actually a difficult thing to achieve.
And maintain.
Yeah.
And keep that audit. Yeah. For food, that's the grade that you want. That's just not pharmaceutical grade, but it's up there, right? Or GMP, so good manufacturing practice sort of thing. Success is market penetration, market leadership. And I think it's hard to judge, but like consumer sentiment. I've told my team that we don't enter award competitions because it's judged by someone that might know what they're talking about, but it's not really helping people. And I said we win hearts and minds of people, and not awards. So for me, that is what success looks like, and be able to have impact for people all around the world. We get messages saying, thank God you exist. This is making my life better.
As an alternative to drinking?
As an alternative, yeah.
Or as just a better quality product, or
all of those things, yeah. This is beautiful, it's delicate, it's delicious. I can go to a house party now, or I've had an illness which has stopped me drinking, and then I was just there bored on soda water and I was going to the bathroom all night. There's so many of those sort of messages that we get. So, it's a really unique opportunity to be able to positively impact people's lives. Like, people often want to do this. We get to do it, and we need to share that and make that available for as many people as possible. I think that's a responsibility that we have.
You mentioned messages there. In measuring that success, you said you don't enter competitions. How do you go about working out that you're having the impact that you want to have?
I don't think it's measurable because it's a feeling with consumers. You can get emails, you can get Instagram messages saying the positive impact that you're having, but is that a true scope of what you're doing? I don't know. Probably not. We can look at our Shopify data and see how many return customers that we have. And I think if you win 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, you're still doing something positive. I don't think you can be too hard on yourself or go, I want 100, I want 200, I want 1,000 or whatever they are. The business is growing. People are sharing it. They're taking it to parties and giving it to their friends that have become pregnant or whatever they are. And, it's getting shared and it's having positive impact. And I think that for us is enough.
I'd like to ask you, Aaron, about the category that you sit in. Obviously, it's in a bottle that looks like a wine bottle. It's not wine. I'd like to know from you what you call the category or what the occasion is, or because I think the confusion for a lot of people when they're choosing not to drink something or they're looking at a non-alc category is they're thinking, when do I drink this? And I think when they look at your beverage, they might be thinking a wine-related occasion simply based on the packaging. But I know that you try to, from what I understand, avoid the getting lumped in with wine and being non-wine. So I'd like to know from you what it is that you do to play with that to try to separate yourself from that.
Good question, and it's something that I talk about a lot and think about a lot. The problem with non-alcoholic drinks is everyone feels like they need to be compared to their alcoholic counterpart, and it is really confusing. A non-alcoholic gin and tonic, is that really a gin and tonic when gin is quite specific on how it's made in a still, thousands of years of tradition, whatever they are, right? Whiskey's the same, vodka's the same, all those sorts of things. And tequila, it has to have agave in it or mezcal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how could you have a non-alcoholic version of that? And I think that's really confusing. And the wine alternative, at least it says it's an alternative, but the wine verbiage or language is very unclear and then somewhat confusing. They get called gastros in America, but in America they don't have gastro like we have here. So you can't call it gastro, right?
No.
Because they're gastronomically led drinks or culinary drinks, right? What are they really? They're an adult beverage, but I can't see non-adult beverage on a billboard at Times Square. It's not very sexy for the marketing department. I've also toyed with the idea of what oat milk did, right? So, or any alternative milks. They changed the I to a Y. So you could do that with wine, so W-Y-N-E, and say, right, this is what the category is, because that says it is, but it isn't, right? Like oat milks did, and they did a really good job of it. And they killed the dairy industry by doing it that way, right? So what's the direction? What's the path? I don't know. I think what we do and our product is quite complex and complicated. It's not designed to be anything else, but also if it's just on the shelf at a store, how do you communicate with the consumer on how to use it, or at least the occasion to have it with? Yeah, so we have 8 products in the range and they've all got numbers on the front of the labels. They also have a lead name as well. So being salted raspberry and chamomile, which is non-1. If you don't remember the one, you got to remember salted raspberry caramel. If you don't remember salted raspberry caramel, you remember the number one. It's actually a bit of a cosmetics hack. They use numbers or they use colors. So I don't know, maybe you used American Crew in the past and you didn't know what it was called, but you're like, I had the blue one or I got the red one, right? That's what cosmetics do. So anyway, we have chosen a color that matches the occasion. So it's the blush occasion, the white occasion, or the darker occasion. We don't call them a non-alcoholic rosé because it's not that. It's not a non-alcoholic white because it's not that either. It's not a non-alcoholic Pinot because it's not that either. And we're not trying to be that. We don't want to take anyone to that.
So it's not necessarily about what I'm hearing is it's not necessarily about avoiding being an alternative to wine or being a beverage that's consumed in a similar occasion to wine, but rather avoiding being associated with specific varietals.
Well, it's avoiding that non-alcoholic gin and tonic conversation where it's like, no, it's not. So, and we still have a bit of that because we have wine in the category, in the name, but it's something that we do try to avoid, but the bottle helps us to at least express what to do. You have it with food, you have it at dinner time. The message in what we're promoting mainly is moderation, right? So if you don't want to drink, you have something that's really beautiful, delicate, well-made, real produce in a glass that actually pairs with food, and you're not having a, maybe somewhat substandard version of something else, and you're getting the full experience that you were probably chasing in the first place. And also making a product that makes actually, like, if you want to entertain the idea, I really don't like the term sober curious. I think it makes like a lot of sense. But if you are sober curious, you would enter the category, have a decent experience, and then go, well, I should have just had a soda water with lemon lime bitters or whatever. And then you're not really having something that's adult. And then for our partners in restaurants, they don't make a lot of money from that either. And food is not great to make money off. The drinks are. And the big opportunity for restaurants is actually to jump on board non-alc and maximize spend per head.
Before the interview, Aaron, we were having a bit of a chat about how you actually started the brand. You were doing some work with a cosmetics business. I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, sure. So I had a background in music beforehand and somewhat some hospitality. Music kind of crosses over when you're in venues, being bars and nightclubs and everything. And when I met my wife, she pretty quickly told me that that's not the lifestyle that she wants to be involved in.
Was she in it as well?
No. We did meet at Rainbow Serpent though. That's another story. That's not for the podcast.
No, that sounds like I can understand. Yeah.
I decided to make a beard oil, and that was quite similar to Non in a way. I just bought some essential oils and started dropping some fragrance into argan oil basically and coconut oil. Then I was like, cool, I got a product. I'll put it out. I knew nothing about it. I'd never sold to a barbershop, never done it. It was build a website on Shopify. I was just like, cool, let's see how we go. Then I got a contract manufacturer to help me make it. I was like, oh, I want to do a shampoo, I want to do a conditioner, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's like, oh, you got to meet this guy. His name's Richard Ganano. He started Aesop. Well, he did the formulation for Aesop. He didn't start Aesop. Dennis Becerra started Aesop. Anyway, met him, and then I learned a lot from him. He was a formulation chemist, and basically how things totally change in scale up. What you might need in 10 kilo batch or something is sometimes the same in a 100 kilo batch. It is not all parts are equal in the scale up, which we experience here as well. And then I learned a lot about fragrances. I learned a lot about stability. Like you could throw in the wrong essential oil into a compound and it throws the compound. It just completely changes the preservative system or the emulsification that happens and all those sorts of things. So I was doing this men's hipster brand, selling to barbershops. During that time, I opened some barbershops as well myself with some partners. I at one point had 6. I've only got 2 left now. And I was traveling around the world, and this is part of that, the non-part of the non-alc pairings and food. Big Bourdain fan. So I was traveling to these places and I was like, where'd he go? And I'll go there.
Did you bump into him at all?
I wish.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Yeah. And, I was trying to find a nose around the world the yardstick for me, to use your word familiar, was, Le Labo, Aesop, Byredo, another brand called Deus and Durga. that were just doing really interesting, beautiful fragrances and trying to find someone that can help me do that, a perfumist, a real proper good one. It was very good English, but that's how I felt about it. And I was working on another one, a newer brand, more premium. And then I was going for a home Monson, so I wanted a tea blend to match with the fragrance. And it was a pairing, right? It's the same as what we have for Non. And during that, trying to make those tea blends, kind of Non just kind of happened as well, side by side. The original branding for Non was done by an agency called TCYK out of Collingwood. And I'd used them for the branding of the other cosmetics brand, which I never launched, which I was going to call Hiatus, which I have decks of buried in my computer somewhere. That is absolutely beautiful and amazing.
Is it coming back one day or not sure?
I've got enough problems at the moment.
Yep.
So I'm all good. I'm full.
Cool.
I don't know, super competitive in that space. I do like the idea of how much it costs and how much it weighs, though. That is very attractive. Because drinks are really heavy and expensive to ship.
Yeah, especially when it's glass. Obviously, the glass is heavy if you get heavier bottles as well.
And you pay for shipping air from a neck, which is fantastic, obviously. So look, there's lots of stuff in my background, and depending on who I'm talking to, but I'll say it on here, is like, I definitely threw a lot of shit at the wall and see what stuck and non-stuck. So I'm glad I finally got something.
There's a non-stick joke in there somewhere, definitely. Aaron, we hear a lot of things about what's happening in low and no alc. Obviously, your answer is going to be biased here, and so I acknowledge that. I'd like to hear your answer about what you're actually seeing in the category, though. I mean, we hear things about it being high growth, and people, I think, at least listeners might be hearing or reading in the press that things are really big. And I suspect that they're quite large in America, maybe because of the sheer number of people, the market's just larger. Or if it is actually a huge, huge thing internationally, that massive, massive amounts of people are drinking low and no alc. I know from my time with Diageo that I wasn't necessarily seeing that in the on-premise, but I'd like to hear your perspective on how things are now, a few years on. What is it that you're actually seeing in the category? It may very well be high growth, but how big is the market really?
I think that the category depends on what you mean by category. Are you talking about wine? Are you talking about spirits? Are you talking about beer? If we're talking about non-alc, beer is leading. Beer is easy to understand. It's beer without alcohol in it.
But I guess we're talking about the occasion that non fits in the someone would otherwise, they're friends. It's a social occasion, having a beverage that doesn't contain alcohol as an alternative to the alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, look, the big opportunity is moderation. The data seems to be going up every time it comes out. It was 70% of people that drink non-alcoholic products being a non-alcoholic version of, let's say, an alcoholic version, to keep it simple, was 70%. The other day I saw 90%, right? So I think every sort of category has enthusiasts, if not influencers. I think that some of the sober people, there's definitely people that need to be sober and stay sober, 100%. And there's also the people that are just like, they're talking more about moderation now as well. I think it's probably to gain new audience as part of their, influencer ambassadorship type approach.
The inverted commas came out, but listeners can't see them. But I just want to communicate that. Yeah.
So I think that moderation is the key. I think that all venues are now catering to it in the on-premise. To come back to your jury thing, again, there's a value in it for the on-premise. There's also losing customers. And I did a talk in Singapore a couple of weeks ago, and I said that NA is a dietary that you need to consider. It's the same as being vegan. Like maybe 5-6 years ago, like you're saying with the Diageo thing, there might have been one vegan option on the menu. Now the whole menu can be converted to a vegan version of something. The same's going to happen with non-alc. Venues that don't have their online menus updated will lose bookings of tables because people are checking that, just like they would have checked the vegan thing. You asked at the start about America being huge, which would be the assumption. It's actually not. I was blown away by how little coverage there was on menus when I went there in January. It's about to kick off though. Australia and the UK are probably the most advanced. And then throughout APAC, the challenge there is such already a culture of not drinking, right? So you either do or you don't. How do you get them to spend more on not drinking when they're perfectly happy with a tea or whatever they are, right? So again, to come back to what you're saying about non-alcoholic, like our biggest competitor is water, right? It's sparkling water. But if our consumer spends money on the level of bubbles in the sparkling water, and that's who we're talking to because they appreciate refined things like water. So it is really interesting. I don't think it's clear cut.
I appreciate you sharing your insights, honest insights on that, Aaron, because there's so much that we hear in the media that, people have all sorts of agendas trying to sway us either way. Yeah, I do appreciate and respect your answer there. So thank you.
You're welcome.
You're inherently a creative mind, and you can clearly see that. You're quite, you only have to spend 5 minutes with you to recognize that that's how you think. I'd like to know how you rein that in. How do you control and direct that creativity? Do you have any tools that you use internally, externally? Do you go to a place or do you play an instrument or paint or something to try to direct your thoughts into a particular place?
Generally, I just let it rip, and I have a leadership team that tell me no.
Yep.
Or sure, can we do that in like a year? But that is one thing. I have ADHD and I don't take medication for it because I don't want to stifle that creativity and those weird ideas that I have. I just enjoy somewhat the chaos of it and just let it be what it is. I think over time, I've learned to be less impulsive and more strategic about my thinking and what that creativity actually delivers, and letting that creativity look at all the different ways, shapes and angles of this thing and trying to choose the right pathway that benefits the business. At the end of the day, we've got nearly 25 employees now, and I somewhat feel responsible for the success of the business they've got people to feed at home, there's a lot of mouths to feed. And from the extension of it, there's husbands, there's wives, there's partners, there's kids, so creativity also could be quite expensive, and it could be ego driven too. That's what I try to harness and check myself on probably more than anything.
How do you go about doing that? How do you check yourself?
Again, that's probably what you asked earlier. I sort of just sit with it. I write it down in a notes in my phone, go back to that note and go, geez, that was a shit idea. It's not so much going, we're going to do this, we're going to do it now. And it's far less, again, it's that far less impulsive thing.
Were you like that before?
Oh, yeah.
And what is it that's helped you to adapt and evolve to keep it a bit more controlled and less impulsive?
Honestly, it's just been really fortunate in hiring really smart people.
That say no, like some black hatters who just tell you, we can't do that.
There's that. Just learning from them as well and being open to learning from them. Another thing I firmly believe in with creativity is actually not looking at your competition, because I think it makes you reactionary and not have original ideas. If you non-started this category, for example, and I try to keep to the roots of this thing was just an idea and it was like, this feels good, so let's just go with it. And I try to run that for the creativity of the business. And then also fostering a positive culture towards presenting ideas within the business, not getting shut down, interrogating them properly and hearing people out.
How do you do that? How do you actually create that space? I mean, as someone myself, I feel like I have those sorts of abilities, but for listeners out there who are maybe struggling to corral those ideas, they might feel like that sort of level of control is also stifling idea development. So I wonder if it might be counterintuitive or counterproductive, some of the activities they might be engaging in to do that. What advice do you have for leaders out there who are trying to foster that creativity?
I have a simple line, which is no idea is a bad idea.
Genuinely meaning it though,
yes,
is what's important, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So say it, because even if it's not right, there's probably something in it. And these people work here and they genuinely care about the business, and do they think about as much as I do? I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they have dreams about it like I do. And let's hear it out, because if you've got the right people in your team and you've got the right culture in the team, then you bet they give a shit just as much as what you do. And they probably got some really good ideas and you want to hear them.
Thanks for that, Aaron. What are you experiencing friction with at the moment? It's deliberately a broad question.
Friction, I think I have two at the moment. My personal development friction would exist in the size of the team and where my limits and capabilities are in managing the size of the team. How big do I want that to be? Yeah, that's probably my personal and professional development friction. And then my other friction is basically the land grab and the amount of new products that are coming into the industry and the quality, and that we are expensive on shelf. We have to be. We use real ingredients that are I generally say, look, the last time I saw a punnet of raspberries, it was $8 or $9, right? We have that in one of our drinks. Verjus is more expensive than wine to make, and we pay a premium for that. We have labour costs of people to produce this, as you can see in the room next door, as production is literally happening as we speak. Because it doesn't have a wet tax, doesn't mean that it's not worth that money. It's considerably cheaper to use flavour houses, considerably cheaper, but the flavours don't taste like the real thing. If you get raspberry, it was basically crack for kids, and it's just this is going to go off. Let's use this and put it in, a Black Forest chocolate bar, right? So that's kind of what you have to deal with, and people are putting that into their products. They're using misleading language, saying it's natural flavours and organic and all that sort of stuff. And yes, they are natural flavours, but they're also extracted with alcohol, because that is the best solvent to get flavours out of things. So what's happening is some of our potential consumers or customers that could have a really good experience with us are probably going into a Dan Murphy's and buying something a little bit cheaper and go, well, look, I'm not going to spend a little bit more and get, I don't know what the likelihood of that is happening. And that's probably a friction that I feel personally.
Is that potentially something that you want to do in any way, have a product that caters to that market and maybe honestly cut those corners, tell people where those corners are being cut?
I am so deep on what we do and the technique and the ingredients that we use that I couldn't possibly think to not do that. Could you go out with a, Apple versus Windows type campaign, and would you go and do that? Probably not. I don't think that's fair to anyone else's business as well. I'm grateful that I get platforms like this to speak about it and get to somewhat educate some consumers. And, that's it basically.
Well, thank you very much for joining me on the program today, Aaron. I just have one last question for you, and that's, who would you like to hear on the show?
I firmly believe on your show you should interview Dave Verhoel, who has Saison Aperitifs. Dave and I have just started to connect, and we have a little bit of a bromance going on Instagram, but he's doing something really similar to us, which is vermouth, and he's just a fantastic guy that you should talk to.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. I'd love to chat with Dave. Thanks for joining me on the program, Aaron. It's been a pleasure having you on. A lot of people have actually mentioned you. I haven't said this earlier in the episode, but a lot of people have mentioned you to me recently as someone who they'd like to hear. So I'm excited to get this episode out. Listeners are going to be hearing this right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.